I'm Jeremy Wormington. The property is 10 the Crescent in Northampton, where we're building or refurbishing it out from a large residential property into a 12-bed HMO.
Hi, my name is Neil Scroxton. I'm the Managing Director of Scroxton Partners, and we've been working on 10 the Crescent in Northampton with Jeremy.
It was another member of Qandor who found the deal, Michelle Lowe. She found it through a local agent. And it was misadvertised in many respects, because this, as we'll discover in a few moments, is quite a large old property around 1900s, and it was built as a single dwelling house originally, but it had been split into 3 flats, and the vendors had gone to a residential agent to sell it on the residential market, and it really wasn't suitable for that. So it had been on the market for some time because people just weren't interested. So she found it through the local agents, and as I said, it was 3 flats. So for anybody to have gone through and want to put it back into a residential property for family, 300 square meters of floor space is quite big. But not only that, they'd have needed to go through planning as well, and that would have put a lot of people off. Whereas for a more commercially aware purchaser, it fitted the bill perfectly.
It was over lockdown. Jeremy asked us a question to do with the structural engineering, that something could come up on the project where they needed calcs, and as it was just on the doorstep, I could go and help him out. It wasn't really introduced to me as a deal. It was essentially, can we have a little bit of help on this? And like I say, that turned into quite a lot more.
Well, planning is always a problem. We knew we had to go through planning anyway, because we wanted to turn it originally into keep it as 3 flats, but 3 HMOs. And this area of Northampton is part of what we call an Article 4 area. So you're allowed to do HMOs, but only if it falls within certain guidelines. We did. So therefore, we progressed through that to keep it nice, sort of sized flats. So that wasn't so much the challenge, but we just had a local councillor who just seemed completely against any HMOs within Northampton. So that was a challenge. So we had to go to planning committee, and on the day of the planning committee, and I was using David Kemp as my planning consultant, also from Qandor, they changed the rules. And that didn't affect just this, but it affected everybody else who was doing HMOs on that particular planning committee. So it got pulled. We had to delay them by a couple of months, and we got told that, well, under the new rules, you can still do a HMO, but you're gonna have to do one big house as a HMO, which is not ideal, but it's what's ended up. But that was a 2-month delay. COVID obviously created a big delay with the builder. We were in building and getting stuff done. And then it hit, so we lost at least a couple of months there. He got hit then by cash flow issues. So I pulled the plug on him because he just couldn't then go on because he'd used up all his cash flow. So it's taken me another 2-3 months just to get somebody else on board and going through the whole building control process, which is where we're at now, just trying to sort of pull the final bits and pieces on that. So there's been a number of challenges along the way, as ever.
So the biggest challenges with this particular project were a lack of information from previous consultants. So when the project was set up, it was done in a very, very basic, just enough to get things over the line kind of approach. What that then meant was that the contractor that originally worked on the project thought that they could go ahead under what's called a building notice and essentially just have the local authority come and check things every now and again for them, and failed to realise that we needed a full set of plans, a full specification, and we really needed to go to the nth degree on it because it's a material change of use of the building, and so that's posed a lot of challenges, mainly because they just haven't been factored in the first place, from a timescale point of view, and probably also not from a budgetary point of view.
So the building is about 1900s. So it's a really nice old Victorian / Edwardian property. It's a large terrace property. As I said earlier, about 300 square meters of floor space over 3 floors, plus a cellar as well, which we're actually not going to use, unfortunately. So there's a lot of character in the rooms, and that was one of the things that we're quite keen to retain, although we might lose that as part of the building control regulations now. So we went through planning. So we've done 2 planning applications. The first one was actually to get 16 people, which is how HMO licenses work. It's all about people as opposed to rooms. So we went in originally for 16 people and 10 bedrooms, all en suites. Because actually having 3 flats would have given us potentially 14 people in here anyway, so asking for an extra 2 was not a big planning risk from that point of view. We never intended to have 16 people in 10 rooms. It just becomes too overloaded on the space. So then we went back in to go for 2 extra bedrooms, but still with 16 people. So we eventually ended up with 12 bedroom HMO with ability to have 16 people that were only licensed to 15. So yeah, that's what we'll end up with in the end. So we'll have bedrooms on each floor, going up into the loft space as well. We've also got a rear loft space which we'll utilise. And then we've got a very large kitchen on the first floor, and then a smaller kitchen and sitting room out on the ground floor, which leads out into a nice small sort of courtyard garden to the rear.
As we've moved forward, some of the things that were on the original designs have just not been possible. We've been making sure that you've got high quality, good spaces for the guys that are going to move in there. In the end, it's the idea is that it ends up having that hotel feel and should have quite a high-end finish by the end of it, whilst respecting the Victorian sort of proportions of the property.
Quite clearly here, it's a good area of Northampton we're aiming at the professional market. It used to be fairly good for students. The main university was just over that way, but that moved a couple of years ago now to the south side of Northampton, so that sort of demographic has moved anyway. I don't really deal with students, so this is going to be done to a good finish. I've used Linda Rosen at Edge Design as the designer, and she's come up with a really funky plan, so it'll appeal to the professional market. I think the main thing I would learn from this one is more around building control. Getting them on, they're on board previously with the other contractor, but once we went with a new building control, and that's created the issues really, and we've probably gone a bit further than I would have liked before getting complete sign-off, because their process isn't quick. We won't have to do much retrospective, very little in fact, but it's just those time delays of course, and then you just don't know what your budget is as well.
Yeah, lessons that everybody can learn from any project. Don't assume that because someone tells you, oh, this will all be all right, it'll all be all right. If it sounds cheap, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You really need to make sure that you get good people on at the beginning of a project to ensure that project can sail through.
Michelle Lowe brought the project to me. She knew I did HMOs and we're going to work on this together. And I was looking up in the Midlands just generally for commercial to residential conversions, but also looking for larger HMOs. So when this came up, it was just in a good location. I mean, it's a great building. It's got great bones. So it was a no-brainer, really.
The biggest problem that we have at the moment, particularly with COVID and sites starting and stopping at will sometimes, is that we need, when we've got time on site, we need consistency, and we need to just be able to move forward with a project, because your end date could be anything if we get another lockdown. So we want to make the most of the time that we are on site, and the only way to do that is to have good quality information that's designed at the front end, and you're never playing catch up then.
The lender actually was pretty good. So we haven't gone for development lending, which would have created an additional complication with all the paperwork and stuff. So we've basically have done a refurbishment lender. So the process is much easier. It's a smaller project. We're looking at about 200,000 for the refurb costs. So it doesn't appeal to a lot of development lenders. So we've gone with Octane as the lender, and so far they've been pretty good actually. I've got very few issues, if any, really, with them. They've been good. I'm satisfied with where we will be come the end. But to date, it's just the frustrations of all the sort of delays that keep on coming on through somebody here putting their oar in and saying we need to do this and do that. It's the case with a lot of developments that you do. I think the problem now with HMOs, particularly maybe a larger one as well, is that sometimes people just don't quite understand them and know where to classify them, and therefore they don't see them as a residential, but they don't see them as commercial either, and that's I think why we get some of the issues that we do now with HMOs.
Yeah, I think so. I think like I say, it's been a difficult project to jump onto, but I do think that because we've come onto the project, we've really helped another club member, start to get control again on something that had a potential to really run away. So yes, I'm pleased with what we've done. I'm pleased with where we're at. I'd like to be a bit further forward, but like I said, just a few things keep coming out of the woodwork as we move along.
So I'd like to thank, no particular order, Michelle Lowe for obviously bringing the project to me in the first place. To David Kemp for doing a fantastic job as planning consultant. Joe Moole for a lot of the bathroom fittings, ensuite fittings. Linda Rosen for sometimes frustrating, but for her, not me, dealing with getting the design done to sort of a way that worked for both of us. And I think we've got a really cool design for the place. And Neil Scroxton as well for stepping in and helping now with the project management of everything.
I think that we have found all the complications. The complications with this project come purely down to needing more information at the beginning and just thrashing the design out and making sure that once someone steps on site to start putting holes in walls and messing things around, that they know exactly what they're there to do. So I think we've found all of the issues. It's now just running them through the process and making sure that we can get the building signed off at the end. All being well, no more skeletons in the closet.